Hello, it is now August 11th, 2025. Welcome to Talk Back. I have a guest who I've had over the past years from his time in Connecticut as the director of the ACLU Connecticut. And now he has a very, very interesting job in West Virginia. And we're going to ask and find out, how does someone from New York, Connecticut, make their way to West Virginia to try to change the world in a world that is crazy today? Right, so hi Andrew, it's good to see you.
Likewise, thank you. Good to see you,
Okay,
Sheila.
so this is Andrew Schneider, and I'm going to read just what he does in West Virginia. He is the Executive Director of Fairness. So let me just read it so everybody has the exact terminology of what you do down in West Virginia as the Executive Director. Fairness West Virginia is the statewide civil rights advocacy organization dedicated to fair treatment and civil rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender West Virginians. The mission is to ensure that LGBT people can be open, honest, and safe at home, at work, and in the community. We represent the diversity of Appalachia, and our membership is open to everyone who believes in fundamental fairness. Great.
Yeah.
So, our mission, can the LGBT community today and the transgender community feel safe, feel protected, or what is happening? Are we going backwards?
So we have certainly hit some major setbacks. There's been a backlash to the movement of progress on LGBTQ civil rights. That is for certain. But at the same time, I think that the movement forward, now that it has begun, cannot be stopped, cannot be halted. And part of that is the culture has changed. That, and not just, here in Connecticut, but in West Virginia, all over the country. So many people who are, so many people who've come out as gay, as kids, in families across America. And that can't be erased or put back in the bottle. It's a fact of our culture. And that has changed hearts and minds, more so than I think the law has. And so while there has been a backlash to some of the progress that has occurred recently, eventually the pendulum will swing back, and eventually we'll pick up where we left off and make changes to those laws that have been repealed.
You are an optimist.
I am.
You are an optimist.
And I don't think I don't think you can be a pessimist in the work that I'm doing. I don't think a civil rights advocate can be a pessimist.
Right.
We all have to be optimists.
But you live with the notion that there will be backlashes. There will be backward motion.
Yeah.
But I don't look at it that way. I look at our country as always moving up. Yes, we've had our flaws. We had our civil rights movements. We had our movements for gay marriage to help the LGBTQ community get rights. But all of those things are moving us up, 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 up. Mm-hmm. We don't go backwards. But it seems to me that this is the first time in our history Roe v. Wade was overturned. Trump is kicking transgender people out of the military. I don't know, we'll talk about your state of West Virginia. What are they doing to go back on transit? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking just globally, we are in a different place in our American history because we've never really gone back that way. We've always had some fights and some backlash. Talk about that.
I mean, I think we have gone back in many civil rights movements throughout the country's history. We've gone back in civil rights for black people. We have, I mean, look at what's happened to the Voting Rights Act. They've chipped away at it, and now there's talk about completely erasing the progress that was made in the 1960s on voting rights. So our country has a history of going back and forth on some of these civil rights issues. But just like LGBTQ civil rights, in my view, and black civil rights, the initial progress doesn't get entirely erased. there are some setbacks, and then over time, when new political leaders take office, those setbacks get corrected. And so I am an optimist.
You
that
are.
is true.
Well, some of it
But-
is the Supreme Court. Some of it is
Yeah.
congressional laws, but some of it is the Supreme Court that we see now is a much more conservative court than we've ever probably had.
But I think this also underscores one of the principle, or I would say one of the mantras of the ACLU, whom I used to work for. They would say that civil liberties battles never stay won.
Okay.
And it requires eternal vigilance. If their other mantra was vigilance is the price of liberty.
Right.
And that couldn't be truer today than ever before. Because it is true that we just can't take the bedrock principles of our Bill of Rights, of our civil liberties for granted. Just like the framers of the Constitution, we have to fight as hard and like hell as they did to put those principles in place and create our Constitution. We have to continue to fight like hell for those principles in order to make sure that they still are there and are still strong and mean something.
Okay. But I think today, the way I look at it, and I think some historians are looking at it, is have we reached a point with the Trump administration and what he is doing where we've just changed the nature of our country and we can't go back? Or is Trumpism an interregnum, just a period, an in-between period where we will get back to what America is and the norms, even though we had our disputes, but we went through the process the proper way, through the court system, Congress. That is all being changed now. So what's your view on that? Can we overcome this, or have we hit a point where we can't go back?
Yeah, I think at this moment in time, we still can go back, and we still can correct the damage that has been done. But I think you're right. There probably will come a point, if some of the current actions of the administration go unchallenged, and there are no guardrails or checks and balances, that we shift from the democratic republic that we have to something else.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a point in time where the democratic institutions cease to exist.
You think it might come in some of the cases that are working their way up to the Supreme Court? Because so far, in terms of the executive orders and other things that the Doge people, messing up all of our federal workforce and firing people, and all of that is really illegal and unconstitutional. The lower courts seem to be doing the right thing, and the appellate courts. The question is, when it gets to that Supreme Court, let's say on the issue of whether or not a president can institute tariffs on his own without Congress.
Yeah, right.
There's some law, there's
Right.
some congressional law that was passed that talked about emergency.
Right.
Every constitutional scholar, all the courts so far are saying it's unconstitutional. Only Congress can establish tariffs, right?
Right.
But when we get to that Supreme Court we have now, what's to stop them from saying, well, because of the enormous executive power we have invested in this president, his determination of what is an emergency, we will take that as
Right.
the law. Aren't you? That's what I'm afraid of.
Of course, I am equally concerned, but I think some of the wrong-headed decisions that have been handed down by the Supreme Court can themselves be overturned later on with a different group of justices. I don't think that any of those. I mean, just like the Dred Scott decision or Plessy versus Ferguson.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually. The question is, does the...
Oh, how many years? 1896 to 1954?
Yeah, it could be long. I mean, right now they have a 6-3 majority. And there's talk about who is, I think, Justice Alito being the next one to potentially step down.
Or Thomas. They're
Or
both
Thomas,
the two oldest.
right. And there was talk about them stepping down before the midterm elections so that the Senate.
And then Trump gets someone young to.
Perhaps. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be, part of the formula to determine when, how long it's going to take for a correction to take place.
So in the area that you are an advocate for, people are worried that the court might turn back gay marriage legality.
Yeah. I mean, just yesterday, or I read something about Kim Davis, the clerk in Kentucky who refused to certify marriages, bringing a case to the Supreme Court that's going to be, I guess they're going to have to decide whether they'll take that case, grant it cert in the fall when their term begins.
Wow.
So it could be sooner than we think.
And then on the issue of, you talk about the voting rights, this whole gerrymandering issue where a state in the middle of the 10-year period, isn't it usually every 10 years we have a census and we allocate the districts?
Right.
Now Texas is trying to do it in the 5, and then everybody else is going to follow suit. The Supreme Court has already said in a prior case that this is a political issue, and they have. I think there was a case that went up to them, and they sent it back, and they said it's not our issue. Do you recall that? And I'm worried about that too. They're not going to talk about that issue, and they're going to, as you said, destroy the Voting Rights Act.
Right. But just like we had discussed earlier, not all the solutions ought to be. We ought not to be looking at the courts to bring these solutions that we're talking about right now. We have to be a little more strategic about it.
And people power counts.
Yeah. It counts greatly. There was a time when the people who support Trump were making their political change through the legislative process, and they successfully created a large bench of getting legislators of their political philosophy elected to the lower offices as state legislators, and that's how they built power to ultimately change the state leaders of state government, and then in turn the leaders of the White House and Congress and the Senate and ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court. The folks on our side need to do the same.
Yeah. Well, there always is an ebb and flow. I mean, the thing is, though, in this period of time, we're taking 7 months or so, it's a lifetime, because every day there are a million things happening that we have to respond to. But there is always a backlash and a reaction to what's happening now. We just have to. So I guess the question I have is, are the people in America who are LGBT people, transgender people, people who just entered into marriages, do they feel that their lives are safe at home, at work, and in the community? How do you
Absolutely
answer
not.
that? And the answer is no.
The answer is no.
And that's a worse feeling than it was last year or the year before.
Absolutely. It is terrible.
Okay.
It is absolutely terrible.
So let's talk about, we'll get to that. What are you doing to help that? Let's talk about your trajectory, because you sent me a podcast where you explain your philosophy about how you work with issues and work with people, and it was very interesting because some of us are just up to here with anger, with frustration, and just shouting out, and we can't talk to those people, our opponents. You take a different view. So go back and tell us, how did someone from New York and then Connecticut, who was from the Connecticut director of the ACLU originally, what made you turn around and go to West Virginia, which people up north think of as, you got to be crazy? Tell us about your trajectory.
Sometimes I think my family thinks that.
What?
I said sometimes I think my family thinks that.
Well,
they're all New Yorkers.
Yeah, right.
So I just felt since college, my passion has been civil rights, not just LGBTQ, of course, because I used to work for ACLU and I was concerned about everyone's civil rights. I still am. And I felt that and this is the reason why I first moved down to West Virginia back in 2001, that the real battles were taking place in the heartland of America. And there's nothing sort of, to me, more heartland-like than Appalachia. I mean, people there are salt of the earth.
At one time, it was the heart and soul of the Democratic Party.
Yes. To give you some political context, in 1988, West Virginia was one of only 8 states in the Electoral College to vote for liberal governor Michael Dukakis, the Democrat.
Who I am sure you remember was told by George Bush that
he was a card-carrying member of the ACLU.
And wasn't it a shame that we let that stick and we didn't really respond to that?
Yes.
How dare you feel embarrassed to be a member?
And that's what got me into politics in the first place.
Really?
Yes. I was introduced to the ACLU shortly before that presidential election by my stepdad, who was a huge fan of the organization and a lifelong member. And I became a huge admirer of the organization myself, and in large part because I saw the organization as a champion of the most basic American values that are embedded in the Bill of Rights. And so when Michael Dukakis was attacked by George Bush as a card-carrying member of the ACLU, I thought at first that it was just your sort of run-of-the-mill cheap shots in a presidential political campaign. But what really got under my skin was when Dukakis seemed unable or unwilling to defend himself. That's when I sort of got it into my head that maybe it would be fun and worthwhile.
Being called a liberal was a dirty word.
No. Yeah. I mean, like, how could you not defend your membership in ACLU? That is more patriotic than the American flag that George H.W. Bush was trying to wrap himself in.
People don't think that now.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting, I think that was in '88.
Yeah.
I think a lot of political historians go back to Reagan and how with his term in office, it changed our conversation. We used to talk Democratic talking points in America, New Deal points. When Reagan came along, he changed the political tone. Do you feel that? And that was part of what was happening by 1988, when being a liberal was a bad thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think in all throughout history, there have been, all sorts of political contests of turning words that meant something into something else. I mean, that has been, probably not even just the history of the United States. It's also probably been the history of the world. How do you take something as someone's good and flip it into someone's bad?
I look at them. I think when you say that about the ACLU, I think about Planned Parenthood and what they're doing to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Same type of thing, an organization that would help young women with education not have abortions.
Right.
They're defunding that.
I mean, it was an organization started by Republican women.
Yeah, right.
And it became sort of the home of liberal Democrat women presently. And so it's made a shift. I mean, I think, I could be wrong, but my memory serves me correctly. I think Eisenhower, or Mamie Eisenhower, was involved with Planned Parenthood.
I think so. Well, and Donald Trump contributed money to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
But so, let's get back to you and your philosophy. And so I see your civil rights was very important. The ACLU was important to you. That was your first job. But you went way back in your podcast that was very interesting to your college days. So here you are, a New Yorker, a Northeastern liberal kid, and you could have gone to Bates in Maine, which is a very nice Northern liberal arts college. But you chose instead to go, is it at the Lion's Den, to go into Virginia to Washington and Lee. So talk about that. What is that in your personality that attracted you to make that choice in your life?
It happened to coincide. It was sort of like the stars were aligned at that very moment, because, like I said, there was the '88 presidential race with Michael Dukakis being attacked as a card-carrying member of the ACLU and not being able to defend himself. And I had, at the same time, become a huge fan of the organization, thinking it was the most patriotic organization in the country. And I wanted to participate in the fight to defend those values. And so it was it was his unwillingness to defend it, or inability to defend himself, that got it in my head that maybe it would be fun and worthwhile to start an ACLU chapter in what might be considered George Bush's backyard. So I started looking for very conservative schools, and I had a teacher at Scarsdale Public High School who had been a recent alum of Washington Lee University, and he said to me, if you're looking for a very conservative school, you should check out my alma mater, where Robert E. Lee is buried on campus. It's like a shrine to the Confederacy.
Is it? Where is it? What town is it in?
It's in Lexington, Virginia.
Lexington, Virginia. Okay.
And he said you should check out Washington Lee University, because even though it's very conservative, you're going to also get a very good education at the same time. And so my like you mentioned, my two top choices were either Bates College, which on the one side my mom wanted me to go to because it was a school founded by abolitionists, very liberal school. Right. And then Washington Lee University, which my dad wanted me to go to because he was more conservative, which I guess, like I said, Robert Lee was buried on campus, and you know, dorm windows when I went down for my college tour were draped with Confederate flags, and so I was like,
do they still have Confederate flags at Washington Lee?
No, they've evolved.
Yeah,
but it was clear to me that this is the place that would be a great sort of laboratory for my sort of getting sort of political education, not just inside the classroom, but more importantly outside the classroom.
So you went down there with a kind of a mission, more than just because I like the campus or somebody told me I'll get a good education. Yeah. You went down there with a political mission.
Yeah.
So what did you say to yourself? What am I going to get accomplished in my freshman year? Did you have a goal?
My goal at the time was proving Dukakis wrong.
Okay.
Showing that you could proudly uphold the banner of the Bill of Rights and the ACLU, and not experience.
We have to keep saying American Civil Liberties Union.
Yes.
Everybody knows the acronym, but
that's right.
We have to
the
American Civil Liberties Union.
Okay. Right. And I went dorm room to dorm room asking my classmates my freshman year, fall of my freshman year, to become card-carrying members of the American Civil Liberties Union at the $5 student rate. And I ended up getting, believe it or not, 80 students to join, which was 20% of my class, because it was a very small school.
Small class.
Yeah, 400 students in the class.
And did they become active, or did they just give you the $5?
Well, that was
that
was a good question. That is a good question, because they went home for their Thanksgiving and Christmas break, and their parents told them what the ACLU really stood for, and so we didn't have 80 active students in this campus chapter. We ended up having more like 15.
But still, you were persuasive enough initially to.
Yeah.
What did you tell them? What was your pitch?
Well, my pitch was what the ACLU stood for, that it protected everyone's rights.
Were there particular issues at the time? So we're in 1989,
1990.
So were there particular issues that would be bubbling up in this country at that point? What were the big issues?
Well, I mean, there were even issues on campus. Whether students could, have, brandish Confederate flags. I don't remember if that was being banned or something, but I do remember talk about, the censorship of things like Confederate flags, and yes, the ACLU does defend hate speech. I mean, speech is speech.
I remember the Skokie situation.
Yeah, Skokie was very difficult for me personally because I'm Jewish. My grandmother and grandfather narrowly escaped the Holocaust, and I was very close to my grandmother. My grandfather passed away before I was born, but I had a very close relationship with my grandmother. She lived in New York at the same time that I took my first job with the ACLU National Office. and I would come over. She would invite me over for lunch or dinner while I was living in the city, and inevitably she would ask me about work, and inevitably it would lead to a debate about Skokie, which I did not want to have.
Isn't it impossible, though, to make that distinction between active violence and free speech? I mean, that was the issue there. Are they inciting violence by their speech, or must we allow them free speech? I mean, to me, that was a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is for, a lot of people, understandably, but the fact is that unless it's, an imminent threat to someone, it should be regarded as protected speech, because at the end of the day, if it's not, then we're giving some bureaucrat in government, or someone like a Donald Trump, or someone equally polarizing on the far left, the decision-making power to determine whose speech is correct and whose speech is not.
That Trump is doing his own Skokie in every college in the country now.
Yeah. I mean, the tables have been turned, so we certainly don't want to make it easier for someone like Donald Trump to censor, people of our viewpoints, of our opinions. I think some of that is already happening.
Or to use fighting anti-Semitism as a pretext.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so to me, and it was back then, and it still is important to defend the rights of people that even I vehemently disagree with, because that's the only way to protect everyone's speech. And that was an argument that I really couldn't make with someone of my grandmother's background, because she was so emotionally caught up, and understandably so, in the history of what happened to our family.
And in what sense we're having this similar arguments today about some in the Jewish community not letting you speak out against what's happening in Israel.
Yeah.
Not letting you say, look, I believe in the existence of Israel, but I can be against what the Netanyahu government is doing.
Yes.
And it's very tough. People are blurring all of those lines.
That's right.
And many in the Jewish community are torn apart by this.
That's right.
Yeah. So getting back to you down at Washington and Lee, you feel like you made progress in your your 4 years were productive for you.
Most productive for myself and for my own political education.
Now I guess you have come out as you're a gay person.
Yeah, I wasn't out in college.
Oh, you weren't. Okay.
No,
so I was going to ask, what about?
It was most the starting the chapter of the ACLU at a conservative campus like Washington and Lee University was important for two major reasons for myself. It helped me learn how to listen and not simply jump to judgment when someone gave me their point of view that was perhaps off color or maybe even slightly offensive. I learned how to sort of withhold fire, because that allowed that person to talk and trust me as someone that they could have dialogue with.
And you use those skills today.
And I use those skills today. But then the other obvious lesson that I learned there was how to think more quickly on my feet, because I was surrounded by people who disagreed with me.
Were LGBTQ issues of any import back then?
Yes,
they started
absolutely.
coming.
Gays in the military was a big debate back then.
That's right, that was a big debate back then.
And we took that on head on.
But you felt comfortable on campus as a...
I did. I didn't feel comfortable as coming out as a gay man at that time, but that wasn't because of Washington Lee. That was only because of my own internal struggles with it.
I got that. Okay, so when you got out of college, you determined your work was going to be in civil rights, and so tell us about the turnaround to West Virginia. You did such a good job as the director of the ACLU Connecticut, but I hear you. Everybody agreed with you. You were lecturing to the choir for most of the time, right? Was that part of the feeling?
I mean, there was definitely work to be done for ACLU here. There was always work for ACLU, or I keep saying ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. But there were issues that I cared about, like LGBTQ issues, that were largely resolved here in Connecticut, but not so much or not at all, in for the large part, in West Virginia, and because I had such a good experience fighting for the understanding of the Bill of Rights and civil liberties down in Washington Lee University, which was very close to West Virginia, right across the border from it. I felt it would be fun to sort of relive that experience as a professional, doing this on the professional level for a state below the Mason-Dixon line,
Right.
close to where I went to school.
And like every state, I mean, we were in Alabama, and it's so conservative, so Republican, etc. There are always people that are on your same wavelength there. You can always find
That's right.
people, right, wherever
Wherever
you
you
are,
go,
wherever
right,
you go.
right.
And so you've been there for 10 years now, right?
11.
Well, that's
Yeah.
2014 is when you started.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's right. It's 11 years
Yeah.
now.
And this is my second time there because first I served as the executive director of ACLU West Virginia
Oh, okay.
from 2001 to 2007. And then ACLU Connecticut hired me to be their executive director from 2007 to
I see.
2014.
So you made connections in West Virginia even before you started this particular job, right? You had
Before I
you had
started
been-
Fairness,
yeah,
I've already lived in West Virginia for 6 years.
Right.
But when I moved to West Virginia the first time in 2001, I knew absolutely no one there.
Okay, and you got to love the state. You got to
I
love.
fell in love with it, yeah. Head over
What
heels.
is there? Tell us why is it so? Well, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I love the mountains. A lot of outdoor activities that I enjoy are there. But I think more important than that is the fact that the people are so incredibly friendly. I remember my first experience was driving down from Connecticut when I didn't know anyone there to take over the running of the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia. And my mom had a very close personal friend who had relatives in Charleston, West Virginia, which is which is the capital where I was going to live, where the ACLU, or American Civil Liberties Union office, is located. And I am a little geographically challenged, so as I was
You know
driving
how to
into
use
Charleston,
GPS though? You probably
This is
figured that.
pre-GPS.
Oh, this is pre-GPS.
yeah,
Okay.
this is 2001. GPS
right.
was years from being
Okay.
invented. I don't think we even had MapQuest back then.
Yeah, people don't know how to read maps now,
Yeah,
though, which is a shame.
yeah. I think I was relying on a triptych from AAA.
That's right, the triptychs. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a super foggy day where the mountains are very close to each other, so the valleys are very narrow, and the fog, when after a very big thunderstorm in the heat of the summer, the fog like sticks within these narrow valleys. So it was like almost zero visibility, and I was driving up this windy hill to what I thought was the person's home I was supposed to stay at. And I wasn't sure, I was doubting myself, and there was a car right behind me. So I pulled over the side of the road, and the car, instead of passing me, pulled up right behind me and parked. And the driver got out and walked up to my window, and he said, "Are you lost?" And I said, "Well, I'm not exactly sure where I'm headed." And he asked me, where I was going, and I mentioned the name of the people I was staying with. He said, "Oh, I know them. Why don't you follow me?" And he basically took me there.
Right.
Yeah. And it was my very first West Virginia experience.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of sort of friendliness and sort of generosity of spirit has repeated itself time and time again in West Virginia. Like I almost feel like I don't need a AAA membership.
Right.
Because if ever my car
So
breaks
it's
down,
interesting. You were
someone's
talking
going to help me.
initially about how the culture has changed so much. It's really hard to go backwards when so many of our families have LGBTQ people, and then their children, their relatives, friends, etc. And you talk about the wonderful way you were welcomed to West Virginia and how kind the people are.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't put that together with the fact that, notwithstanding people's familiarity with family members and friends who are gay and so forth, I can't put that together in my mind with Trump in the campaign putting out 40,000 anti-trans ads. I mean, people say he was elected because of the price of eggs. No, I'm not sure. 45,000, and they all went to they went into the red states. They didn't go into Connecticut. And another 45,000 ads about how a migrant was going to attack.
Well, actually, I disagree that they all went to the red states. A lot of, actually, most of them, I think, went
to
into
the purple states,
yes,
probably.
but
the people in
the
West
swing
Virginia,
states.
yeah. So I'm thinking, how do you take the harshness, the insults, the cruelty toward the LGBT community, and especially the trans community, what some of the people in Congress are doing to this woman who was elected a congressman? They're treating her like dirt. It's really disgusting. How do you put that together with the quality of the people in West Virginia who voted for Trump overwhelmingly?
Yeah.
You tell me.
I feel that it's like it's a cult, and I feel that people are following the cult of personality here more than anything else. That's at least what I've experienced in West Virginia. People, you can have conversations with people, but you're not going to sway them on Trump because it's like a religion.
Even if they support you and your work, and they're still going to, their nephew is trans, or they're still going to vote for him.
Even if they love their trans kids and their gay kids, they still support Trump. It's uncanny, but that's why I say it's a cult. It's like a religious fervor. They're following a dogma that they can't.
Or is it like the George Bush thing you didn't like? They are nice people, but they're never going to vote for that doggone Democrat. You know what I mean? They're going to vote for Trump over, they cannot make themselves vote for this woke, liberal Democrat. So they'll vote for Trump, even though in their heart they may know that the cruelty and everything is against their self-interest. I don't know. That's just...
I mean, I think there's also I think you're onto something as well. I think there's also a sort of tribalism that's going on as well, that they're Team R instead of Team D right now. But back in the day, remember we were talking about the '88 presidential campaign, they were Team D.
Right.
When all these other states were Team R.
Right. Well, because back then the economic issues of labor meant something. Unions meant something. Unions have lost a lot of their
clout.
Yes,
right? They have.
And I think people are voting sometimes more on the cultural issues than they are on the economics. They're voting against their self-interest economically, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, they've done that before.
Yeah.
They did that during the Reagan era as well.
Right. Exactly. So tell us what other, before I have some slides from your website that I want to show that will give us an idea of what's happening in West Virginia on your issue. But just very briefly, tell us what are the issues now, things that have gone backwards or that you're trying to fight now in West Virginia and correspondingly in the country on the LGBTQ and transgender rights.
Yeah. So on trans rights, it's really bad. A lot of bills were passed this past legislative session that make life a lot harder for particularly trans youth. There was a forced outing bill that basically requires teachers to out trans kids to their parents.
To their parents?
Yeah, even if those parents might harm their kids with that knowledge, kick them out of the homes, or even, dare I say, violence. There was a bill that was passed.
What do they threaten? What is the threatening force of it?
I mean, it's a wedge issue. I think most of these legislators who are voting for it do not appreciate the harm of what they're doing. They're doing it because they think it helps their party and their
and they don't care how many trans kids might commit, commit suicide because of it.
They're willfully They try to willfully remain ignorant of
And
that.
how many, what percentage of young people are we talking about who are trans or?
It's a very tiny
Very, very
percentage.
tiny.
Very tiny percentage.
And then the whole issue of the sports with transgender.
Yeah.
Let the scientists take a look at that and see if there are any physical differences that might. But don't make it this huge social issue for
Or
a.
leave it to the local level.
Or leave it to the local level.
Leave it to the high schools and
Yeah.
I mean, and the school associations.
Well, that's what I mean. So the Trump crowd,
Yeah.
they've whipped this into such a frenzy that is so cruel. So when I talk about it, I want to scream and shout. But you can. How do you keep your equanimity, your calmness about this when you must be outraged inside?
Of course.
So what do you?
Yeah.
How do you maneuver? How do you?
I mean, the same way I maneuver when I was talking to students who would have these views. I may not be able to persuade them on everything that we do. I learned this also through ACLU. We used to have another mantra. I'm going to be quoting more things from my former employer than I am for fairness, who I currently work for. But ACLU had a great saying that if you agree with 80% of what we do, you should become a member. But if you agree with only 50% of what we do, you should become a board member. And I thought that was perfect because my experience with my American Civil Liberties Union board of directors that I worked for would have endless debates. I mean, they were made up of mostly lawyers. They all thought they had opinions, and they would debate ad nauseum, very small issues sometimes. And so there was constant disagreement even on ACLU issues within the ACLU board of directors. So I learned through that process, as well as through my education at Washington Lee University, that you're not going to get everyone to believe exactly like you do, but you have to still continue to try to find common ground on some of the things that you believe.
And you're able to do, and you probably have established relationships with the legislators in West Virginia.
So I may
have
not,
you had some successes legislatively? Have you able
absolutely.
to stave back, push back?
We have. We still defeat most of the anti-LGBTQ bills that get introduced. I mean, there were about 50 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced last session this year, and I think 4 bills passed into law that we didn't like.
So the trans is a big issue. What else is another issue that you're dealing with?
So there was an attempt to, this is an area where we have lots of success. We help local municipalities adopt LGBTQ non-discrimination laws that ban discrimination against gays, lesbians, bisexual, and trans members.
They can do that in city and town ordinances,
yes.
even though the state may have a different rule.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, the state doesn't have a rule banning them to do that, but they
can.
have tried. And so the only way to enact protections for our community is through the municipalities. So we have helped 20 municipalities throughout West Virginia adopt these laws that ban discrimination in employment, housing, and public spaces. And it includes the largest city in our state,
So
Charleston.
it's not those, on a statewide level, you can discriminate on the basis of being gay
there's
or
no laws
trans
that ban
or,
that discrimination, right?
Okay.
But in these 20 municipalities, you cannot discriminate. And it includes the largest city in our state, Charleston, but it also includes the smallest town in America with such a LGBTQ non-discrimination law. That's Thurmond, West Virginia, population 5, and all 5 of them are on the town council that voted unanimously to enact the law.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's terrific. That's like the people up in New Hampshire voting for the
That's
president.
right. That's right. but also, I want to point, this is another important point, which also continues to help affirm my belief that this work is worthwhile. A week after the second Trump election in last year, 2024, this was mid-November, the town of Wardsville, West Virginia, unanimously approved their LGBTQ non-discrimination law in their town council.
And notwithstanding that, the town probably voted
Yes,
Trump.
the town voted for Trump, and a number of those council
Amazing.
members voted for Trump, and then they turned around and unanimously supported their LGBTQ town folk by
How do you explain that?
enacting those
Yes.
protections.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how do I explain that? Because I somewhat disagree that Trump got elected solely because of the anti-gay,
Immigrant.
civil rights
Immigrant, yeah.
laws that he was promoting. I do feel like economic issues played a role. I do feel like there were other factors at play besides the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric.
Okay, interesting. Before we close, let's turn to the few slides we have. So here you are with your group, Fairness West Virginia. Okay, and this talks about you. We've already discussed your history, and we can find that on the website. And here you are again with your crowd at Fairness. And what is this one all about? This one, it says, going to have something on September 9th. What is it going to be? The Roaring Twenties?
Oh, that was
Is that an old
that's
one?
an old one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But just give us some idea of the kind of programs that you have. What did you do?
We actually have an annual gala that is our big event for the year. It's also our biggest fundraiser for the year, and we always have a theme that has some sort of connection to LGBTQ folks. So the Roaring Twenties this was a couple years ago. That theme was to mark the decade when LGBTQ people had a period of time where their rights were elevated and their visibility was elevated in a way that hadn't been at any time before in American history.
Okay, all right. Next.
But this year we are having our
Something
gala
else?
on October 25th.
Oh, I think I have that one. Let's see. What's this?
That is
night.
it.
Is that it?
Yep.
October 25th.
Yep.
And well, it looks beautiful. A night in Studio 54.
Yep.
There's a 54 studio in Manhattan. Where's yours in
Well,
Virginia?
it's not West Virginia. The point here is that that Studio 54 was a very popular club that welcomed LGBTQ people.
Right, exactly. Okay, let's see a couple more slides. Oh, that's so pretty. Summer of Pride. Look at that. Beautiful. That's beautiful. And then the 10-year anniversary of marriage equality.
Yeah.
And and this one, tell delegates to vote no on forced outing. You talked about that.
We just talked about that.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. Aren't the teachers raising Cain about this?
Yeah. No, we had lots of teachers speak out against it. The lawyer for the American Federation of Teachers, the teachers union, spoke out against it in the committee hearings. But despite all that, they were bent on basically punishing trans people and harming them. So there was not a whole lot we were able to do.
What happened to a teacher who disobeys, doesn't follow that law?
They can get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been working. We actually work with teachers to help them navigate the laws so that they don't cause harm to their students or themselves. So we're very active in trying to reduce and minimize the harm of these laws, even once they get passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing to keep in mind is that just to paint or illustrate the challenge that I face or that we face in West Virginia, we have the most Republican, most I would even argue anti-LGBTQ legislature in the country.
Really?
We have a House of Delegates that's equivalent to your General Assembly.
House of Representatives.
House of Representatives. That is made up of 100 people, and only 9 of them are Democrats.
Wow.
And in our Senate, we only have 2 Democrats in our 34-member Senate.
Wow. So you've got a lot of challenges, but yet, so give us your final thoughts with all of what you've said. The total imbalance in Democrats versus Republicans, the laws that your state, West Virginia, is now trying to pass against trans, the fact that our LGBT community in West Virginia and in America and our trans community don't feel safe and protected.
Yeah.
Finish up our program by telling us why you're still an optimist. And what we
I'm
can
an
do.
optimist because I believe that's going to change. I don't believe that is the end of the story. And like I said or alluded to before, even with some of these bad laws that have been adopted, we have been doing things to help trans people like navigate these laws and to access the services that are being denied them, so that they can continue to live in West Virginia and you know, enjoy the protections that they've been enjoying before, just by taking a little more care to work around some of these laws.
Okay. Well, Andrew, it's been great having you as a guest, and
Likewise.
your
It's been great to be
personality,
here.
your psychology about how to work with other people who don't agree with you is why you've been so successful and why you're still in West Virginia and still optimistic about what's happening to this country. I give you so much credit. So we need more people like Andrew Schneider
thank you.
working today who can quietly, calmly help us protect our earned rights in our country that he believes we're still going to have, that will be recovered, and America is great.
But we're not going to have if we don't fight for them. So it's not
We
not
have
going
to
to be
fight
me
for them.
alone
Yes.
doing this.
So
It's
you've
gonna
got to
be-
join the
Yes.
American Civil Liberties Union, and if you're in West Virginia, or if you're not.
And it doesn't matter
take a
if you're not
look
in West
at
Virginia. Go to our website and donate to Fairness West Virginia.
Fairness West Virginia website, and learn about all the wonderful things you're doing, and that wherever you are in America, there's no bad state. There are good people everywhere.
That's right.
And there are good people fighting the good fight everywhere.
That's right.
Okay, great. All right, we'll see you all next time on Talk Back. Bye.